Popular. Oh, Victor, new hour. Today we are going to explore Civil War. How did we get here and where did it go? There is not a single event that caused the American Civil War. As we looked at the events leading up to the war, we are looking at the war that was leading a long time in the making. The first events in the Compromise of 1850, after the U.S. won the Mexico War, it gained large territories, just like the Louisiana Purchase. The conflict between the Free State and Slave State heated because the Compromise of 1850 introduced the Hugh Clay, who hoped to pass the large bill. There was such a disagreement between the Congress and President that Stephen Douglas broke the bill up into sections to pass it. And the end for the new California was admitted as a free state. Slave state was prohibited in Washington, D.C., and Texas loses the boundary dispute with New Mexico. For the South, there were no slavery restrictions in Utah or New Mexico territory. Slaveholding was permitted in Washington, D.C. Texas got 10 million and the fugitive law passed. Who won and who lost in the deal in the North seemed to gain the most because the balance of the Senate was now with the free states. The main thing that the South won was the Fugitive Slave Act. In the end, the North refused to enforce it because even more unrest. The major next event was the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1850. This act divided the remainder of the Louisiana Purchase into two territories, Kansas and Nebraska. The new territories would decide the issue of slavery for each state by popular sovereignty. Most thought that Nebraska would be a free state and Kansas would be a slave state, but since both sides just tried to control the process of writing the Constitution in Kansas, violence ensued. Historian James McPherson said he may have a single important event pushing the nation to a civil war. This event was called Bloody Kansas. When it came time for popular sovereignty, many pro-slavers across the Missouri line to vote in the Kansas election. The territorial governor Andrew Riddier ordered the new elections because of voter fraud, and in the new election, the Free Soilers won. Kansas legislators refused to seat representatives from the second election, so the Free Soilers met the Topeka and wrote in the Constitution. The pro-slavery group at the Lexington wrote their own Constitution. Then pro-slavery Missouris wrote the border and burned down Lawrence, looted homes, destroyed anti-slavery printing presses, and killed one man. James Brown and his sons retaliated, killing 5 pro-slavery men and put a woman. And this led to a decade-long guerrilla war between the two factions. This climate of violence created by Bloody Kansas, the 1857 Supreme Court Dred Scott decisions is landed on like a bomb. Dred Scott was a slave who decided he wanted to be free and had lived in free territory for a number of years. The Supreme Court ruled the slaves had no standing in court because they were not citizens. The Supreme Court also ruled that Congress had no authority to ban slavery in the territories. Northern states did not like this because it destroyed popular sovereignty and democratic. It was very divided at this point, and the presidential election of 1860 only proved this point. You have the Democratic Party splitting their nomination. The Southern Democrats nominated John Breckinridge The Northern Democrats nominated Stephen Douglas. Of course, the Republicans nominated Abraham Lincoln. And to add to the confusion, there was a new party called Constitutional Union who nominated John Bell. Republicans wanted to profit slavery in territories and continue slavery where it existed. The Southern Democrats supported the federal slave code in territories and popular sovereignty. The Northern Democrats opposed the federal slave code in territories and also supported popular sovereignty. The Constitution Union Party just wanted to avoid the slavery issue and keep the countries united. Since the Democrats split their parties' votes, Abraham Lincoln won the election and several southern states seceded. Of the news hour, I want to give a shout out to one individual who was pivotal point in the conflict. That was John Brown. John Brown gave his life for the sake of his belief that slavery was a sin against God. He is a very definition of a martyr. At the time of the Civil War, he was a hero to many abolitionists and Union soldiers. He was even a subject of a popular marching song. When he was 37, a clergyman, Elijah Lovejoy, was killed for publishing an anti-slavery newspaper. At his memorial service, John Brown stood up and said, "Here before God and in the presence of these witnesses, I consecrate my life to the destruction of slavery. Life got in the way, but in the spring of 1855, his sons, who were living in Kansas, wrote and asked him to help against the boarding ruffians. After he got the letter, John Brown, taking every weapon he could, got his hands and set free. I'm going to Kansas and make it a free state." John Brown felt divinely inspired. He felt that he was an instrument of God, and he took out and killed 5 men in Pota who were dangerous to the very survival of the Free State settlers in Kansas. He also had a plan to take over the arsenal at Harper's Ferry. He believed that slavers would join him, and then the revolution then would snowball. When everything went wrong, he had several chances to leave, but he stayed in a deliberate act of martyrdom. His last words before his execution: "I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away, but as part of the series, we're going to interview soldiers from both the Union and Confederacy. Since there are still hard feelings, they will be interviewed separately about one of the battles they were. Hi, my name is William Henry. I was a Union soldier. About it, all I really remember is the Battle of Gettysburg. We were under Major General George Meade, and we're up against Rebel General Robert E. Lee. He was hoping to take the war to the north. The battle started by accident when our side ran into the rebels to get to the position. The first day it ended retreating, so we get a better position. On the second day, we finally drove off the rebels, and they retreated to Virginia. They never tried to invading the north again. Hi, my name is Alexander Balter. I was a Confederate soldier. One of the battles I was at was Sharpsburg. My troop and me were in Maryland under Robert E. Lee, and we were vastly outnumbered 2-1. My boys had fought the hand-to-hand with those Yankees when artillery ran out. It was a close call, but Robert E. Lee troop able to escape. I heard Lincoln was upset about escaping and fired at Yankee General McLean.
That should be no concern. He will not attack others against his will.
In the aftermath of the Civil War and its reconstruction, how do a radical white Northern Republican feel about it? I feel it was a failure. The South needed a full social rehabilitation. The free blacks needed improved education and labor conditions. Congress was able to pass progressive legislation. The Civil Rights Act of 1866, the Civil Rights Act of 1875, and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, and of course the Freemen's Bureau's charts. But President Andrew Johnson repeatedly vetoed many of this legislation he ended up being impeached later on. President Hayes removed federal troops from South in 1877 when that happened. Former Confederate officials and slave owners almost immediately returned to power. These white Southern politicians passed black codes, voter qualifications, and other legislation that reversed the rights blacks had gotten. The conservative Supreme Court supported them. Then the sharecropping system was developed and became widespread throughout the South, so reconstructive to an end, with most of its goals left unaccomplished. It's been a presentation of the John Holzrichter's News Hour. We hope you found it informative.